What if marrying a good person is quietly breaking you down, and you don't even know it? Now wait, before you click away, this isn't about villainizing kindness or loyalty. It's about something far more subtle and far more dangerous. Because sometimes the psychological cost of commitment doesn't show up in screaming fights or slammed doors. It shows up in the slow erosion of your identity, in the silent sacrifice in love, where you're applauded for being with someone good, but deep down, you feel like a ghost of who you used to be. Think about it. You're with someone who checks all the boxes. They're supportive, they're respectful, they're everything your friends and family told you to look for. And yet, something feels off. You find yourself second-guessing your choices, suppressing emotions to keep the peace, and wondering, is this love or self-abandonment? This video is not your typical relationship advice. It's a deep dive into the subconscious relationship dynamics that no one warns you about. We're pulling back the curtain on the good person marriage trap and exposing how emotional suppression, identity loss, and toxic relationship patterns can hide behind even the most well-meaning love. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand the psychological effects of marriage like never before, but you'll also learn how to reconnect with your authentic self in marriage and rewrite the rules of healthy relationship psychology. Because being loved by a good person shouldn't mean losing yourself in the process. The good person mask. Why compatibility isn't always what it seems. It's easy to mistake kindness for compatibility. A partner might be gentle, generous, even selfless, and yet something just doesn't click. That's because partner compatibility psychology runs deeper than surface-level goodness. Compatibility isn't about how polite someone is at dinner. It's about how well your inner worlds align. When values, needs, or emotional languages clash beneath the surface, even a good person can unknowingly trigger your slow emotional erosion. Take Mia, for example. She married a man everyone adored. He never raised his voice, always brought her flowers, but dismissed her ambitions as just phases. Over time, she stopped sharing her dreams, quietly shrinking into a version of herself that felt acceptable. That's emotional suppression in marriage, a silent kind of suffering where your inner life becomes background noise, and it's often rewarded with praise from others. You're so lucky to have him. But at what cost? This is how losing yourself in a relationship often begins, not with betrayal or drama, but with subtle self-betrayal. You start adjusting your personality to avoid tension. You smile through things that make you ache. You prioritize peace over truth. It feels easier, safer, maybe even noble. But over time, this emotional sacrifice chips away at your authentic self in marriage. And that's when things get dangerous. See, the real threat isn't always who you married, but who you become to stay married. And this opens up a deeper conversation, one most people never dare to have. Self-erosion in relationships. When love becomes a disguise for disconnection, there's a hidden rule many carry into marriage. If they treat you well, you shouldn't complain. But this mindset can quietly lead to self-eroding relationship patterns. You convince yourself that your emotional discomfort is selfish or ungrateful. That's how self-betrayal in marriage hides in plain sight. You end up abandoning parts of who you are because you fear disrupting the harmony that everyone else sees as ideal. Let's say your partner always makes the decisions, where to live, what to watch, how to raise the kids, and you go along with it because they're so thoughtful. But slowly, you stop having opinions. Your voice fades. That's not peace, it's identity loss in relationships. And the irony? The more you bend to keep the relationship running smoothly, the more disconnected you become from your own needs. Eventually, you forget what truly matters to you. The psychology of relationships often ignores this gray area, where you're not in a bad marriage, but you're not thriving either. It's like living in a house that looks perfect on the outside but feels cold inside. You smile in photos, go to therapy, read all the right books, but nothing changes. That's when people start asking themselves, is it love or self-abandonment? Honestly, if more people were talking about this, maybe fewer of us would feel so alone in it. And hey, if this is hitting home, maybe save it, send it to someone who needs to hear it, or stick around. This stuff doesn't get talked about enough. But before you can change this dynamic, you have to understand how we unconsciously get stuck here in the first place. The mind plays tricks in the name of loyalty, and that leads us into the next, more uncomfortable truth. When commitment turns into emotional suppression. Here's the twist most people never see coming. Sometimes, the longer you stay loyal to a relationship, the more you lose access to your own truth. It's not because your partner is cruel, it's because the psychological cost of commitment can sneak in quietly, especially when you've convinced yourself that good equals right. But what if that commitment is built on emotional suppression, not true compatibility? Think of Daniel. He loved his wife deeply, admired her strength, praised her loyalty. But every time he wanted to express sadness or doubt, he swallowed it, telling himself he didn't want to burden her. He thought that was love. Over time, though, that silence turned into resentment. His needs went underground. That's the toxic relationship pattern no one talks about, where emotional sacrifice is disguised as maturity and being the strong one becomes a prison. Marriage can feel like a place where you're supposed to have it all figured out. But what if the very role you've created for yourself, provider, peacemaker, nurturer, is keeping you stuck? That's where the hidden cost of marriage begins to rot the foundation. You keep showing up, but not as yourself. You give, but not from fullness. You stay, but it's more about duty than joy. And no one sees it because on the outside, everything still looks so nice. But there's a way out of this. A way to reconnect with your authentic self in marriage without blowing up the life you've built. It starts with a radical kind of honesty, the kind most people are too scared to practice. So here's the real question. Are you truly being loved, or are you just being accepted for the version of you that's easiest to love? Because the psychological effects of marriage aren't just about the other person. They're about the small daily choices you make to either stay true to yourself or not. And the scariest part? You might be sacrificing your identity not for survival, but for approval. That's why this matters. You can be with a good person and still feel like something essential inside you is fading. But now that you see it, you can stop it. What would change if you gave yourself permission to take up space again? To want, to feel, to disagree? What if love didn't mean disappearing, but expanding? That's where real personal growth in marriage begins. So, take a breath. Reclaim a part of yourself today. Even if it starts small, journaling, setting a boundary, having one honest conversation, it matters more than you think. And hey, if this sparked something in you, it's probably going to hit home for someone else too. So don't keep it to yourself. Share it, pass it on. If you want to keep diving into these deeper layers of relationship psychology, go ahead and subscribe and turn on notifications. We've got a lot more truth to unpack, and it's just getting started.